Common Knowledge is brought to you by PureMTGO.com and InkedGaming.com. Use coupon code CCMTG10 at checkout for a 10% discount on all Inked Gaming supplies and accessories. You can support the show directly through Patreon at patreon.com/common knowledge.
This is Common Knowledge, a Magic the Gathering podcast about improving at the game with a focus on pauper play. It's not about the cost, it's about the knowledge. Welcome to Common Knowledge. Here are your hosts, Brandon Clark and Lobbert. Enjoy this week's episode of Common Knowledge.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 35 of the Common Knowledge podcast. I am your host, Brandon, and joined with me is the feisty Sean the Lobbert.
Aha! What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
It's been kind of rough, but I'm here.
Nice.
How are you?
That's all that we ask, is that you be here no matter what, because we don't care about your personal life. We need you here to give us common knowledge.
Answer the question. How are you?
I'm good. Just getting everything ready for college, because, you know, I'm a 28-year-old man going to college for the first time.
Okay. You just brought up something, and yeah, we're going off topic already. Everyone who goes to college feels like everyone else in college is like on another level than them. Everybody who's just out of high school and just going to college is like, everyone can grow a mustache besides me. And like, they feel like they're too young. And then all the people who are like, 25-ish are just like, oh, I'm here too late. Like, and then everyone past that is just like, I'm an old man or woman. Just anyone can go to college. You don't have to be a certain age. Stop it.
I probably just feel weird because I had to do a first year orientation and I was the oldest person in the orientation by a margin.
Who cares?
Like, the next oldest person was like 23.
And they're probably like, that guy's got his crap together. I don't know what I'm doing here.
I mean, I guess at least they know what I'm doing. Like, I was one of the few people that when our student advisor was like going around the room and he's just like, do you know what your degree falls under? Are you planning on transferring to a university? And everyone's like, we don't know. And I was just like, no, I'm doing this and for this. And he's just like, and that's what you want to do? Yeah. Because you know your path? And I was like, I guess. And he's just like, yeah.
Yeah, see? Miles ahead of everybody else. Let's get into the show.
Okay. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we're doing a show.
A show? What about? Show. What is this show?
So our main topic this week is blue-black control.
I just threw you right under the bus there.
Yeah,
you can do my job for me now, Sean.
I didn't know I was doing that part, but I did it.
Yep. So this is episode 35, Common Knowledge, a Pauper podcast about Pauper. Yeah. And our main topic today is blue-black control. And we're going to kind of talk about that, probably mostly the blue-black alchemy version, because that's kind of the most popular and seems to be the best version of the deck.
I'm sure I'll go off topic and talk about the other ones.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I mean, I derail this podcast. I think that's just why I'm here.
We've already done it once today.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. Yeah, but first we're going to go through all our other mumbo jumbos. You know, that stuff we do. That one segment, Sean. What is it?
What are we playing?
That's the one. So what are we playing?
Like, we're not playing the same thing. It's like individual.
Oh. Well, but the segment's what are we playing?
That doesn't make any sense.
What?
So this week I ran 2 leagues. Like, I think last week I had a goal to play about 20 games, and I did play about 16, which that's pretty good. 10 of them were in leagues, and I didn't win a single one of those games. Like, I played a Blastoderm brew, and I played my mono red
for the people at home who might not know what a Blastoderm is. KP, I don't know what a blastoderm is.
You
Can you
don't?
tell me what a blastoderm is?
So a blastoderm, it's a 4-mana 5/5 with Shroud, and it has Fading 3. And Fading is the mechanic where it can have 0 counters on it, but when you go to remove another one, so it's different from Vanishing. I don't know. I like to throw that out there because people get them mixed up, and they think that your Blastoderm's going to be gone, and you take the counter off, and it's still there. Anyway, I lost a whole bunch, so I was going to record videos for both of them. The first 3 rounds are recorded, but the last round is just me, like, saying the F word over and over. Like, so I decided not to post those.
That was like the league I played last night. I went 2-3, and my wife came out of the room at one point. It was just like, you need to just stop.
So what have you been playing?
I played a lot of Blue Black Alchemy this week in preparation for the show, and also because I was sick of losing to Stompy and Random Jank at the Oasis Tuesday night Pauper tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
So I took Blue Black control so I could, beat up on Stompy.
That work?
Yeah, it did. Evan Car's Justice is really good, and I think Edicts are back because everyone's trying to pants up something big.
That's true.
So I was just kind of like, don't want to get beat by something that I can't lightning bolt. So grab my Doom Blades, grab my Edicts. So yeah, I got to 3-0 at the Oasis Pauper tournament. So that was kind of fun.
It feels weird that those are like, you go to a tournament and you play 3 rounds. Like, I'm so used to online where you play 5.
It's not like a real tournament. It's more just it's kind of like just F&M style, it's just 3 rounds of Swiss, and they pay you out, pack a win or whatever.
Yeah, just for
fun. And then I take all my packs and get store credit, and then I spend that store credit on Final Fantasy cards.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, you're the worst.
That game is so fun, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But then I did play a league last night with Blue Black Alchemy where I played against Mono Black Vampires with Black Red Vampires. It did splash red so that it could cast Bump in the night.
Why did it need to be tribal vampires?
It just was. His game 1, he went 1-drop vampire, and then on turn 2 he played 1-drop vampire, 1-drop vampire, so he had 3 1/1s. And then he played another 1-drop vampire and another 1-drop vampire, and then I cast Evan Car's Justice.
Yeah, you're pretty good.
Oh, it's so good.
Hit your land drops on time?
Yeah, I did. And then I played against Burn, and I beat Burn, and so I'm like 2-0 in this league, off to a really good start, feeling good. And I played against Burn, and I didn't draw more than 3 lands. And then I played against Burn again, and I just lost to Burn, just flat out. My draw was totally fine, but Burn is, I think, just a bad matchup. And they just, did the thing that Burn did, and they got me. Gitu Lava Runner was really good, like really punishing.
Yeah.
If like they make me choose between, they like cast a spell, and it's like, okay, are you going to counter this spell? You countered the spell, you have no more mana. Okay, Lava Runner, you pow. And then I played against Green White Slivers, and didn't break a sweat game 1. Games 2 and 3 never found a 4th land. So I went from 2-0 to 2-3.
Well, I don't mind losing that much if I like front load my wins, but like it's a snowball effect. If I lose 3 games, the last 2 are just a joke. Like I play them out, but I'm not hoping for much. Like I think if you go 1-4, like by default in a league, you get 10 points. So your first win gains you almost nothing. It goes up to 20 points, right? And that, like, every win after that is like way more, like almost exponentially more.
Yeah, if you 3 and 2, you get a treasure chest and 80 play points, which is the cost to join the league.
Mm-hmm.
So like you already you get back what you put in and a little extra. Or it might be 2 treasure chests. I think it's only one. It might not even be a treasure chest.
It's 1.
It is? It is 1 at least?
Yeah, I 3-2 a lot.
Okay. It makes me feel bad when I dwell on it, but I usually don't just have middle of the pack performances. I either crush something or I just do awful. So that makes me think that I'm just probably really lucky. But anyway, all right, that's what we're playing. So should we move on to our next segment, Card of the Week?
Yes.
Cool. So this week for our Card of the Week, we look back on our notes and realize that we've only done 2 black cards. So we want to share the love to all you black players out there, and we're going to talk about Kumbaya Witches.
You mean Kumbaj Witches?
Yeah, that's what I said. Kumbaj Witches.
So, Kumbaj Witches is black for a 1/3 summon witches. I love this.
It's not just one witch, it's summon witches. It's 2. There's 2 of them.
And it has the ability to tap and deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Kumbaj Witches also deals 1 damage to target creature or player of target opponent's choice. Choose your target first. It's kind of a weird ability, but it is really good. A 2-mana pinger with such a good body that's not a normal thing. It survives its own pinging really well.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this card is that it's a 1/3. That already is just good stats on a 2-mana creature. And then the 1 ping, that kills nearly everything in the format that is pretty relevant. I mean, they're the ninjas and the Gurmag anglers, but nothing in the mono black decks die to the ping.
Yes and no. There's been a lot of builds of mono black that run what is it? The Spectre? The Liliana's Spectre. It's a 2/1 with flying for 3 that your opponent discards a card when you play it. And then the Dusk Legion Zealot. People play around with those cards in there. You can totally build the deck without them, but
I don't think I've ever, because wouldn't you rather just play Chittering Rats instead of the Spectre? And
I think they do. I think they just find room for all of them. Yeah.
Huh.
And I thought for a while, you have to choose, either you're going to play that build with extra versions of those cards, or you're going to play Kumbaj Witches. But I have seen builds of both, and it kind of makes me scratch my head. But yeah,
that feels really bad to have your own 2/1, 3-mana 2/1 get killed by your Kumbaj Witches.
You can just not activate it, or if you have both of them out, chances are you don't care or you're ahead.
I guess. I don't know. A 2/1 for 3 mana just seems really bad. So what are you going to do? Are you going to activate your Kumbaj Witches to kill their flipping little fairy guy, and then they're just going to kill your guy? Or are you going to not do it and then just never attack or block with your 3-mana creature?
Yeah, I guess you're just touching on that Kumbaj Witches has some deck building costs where you can't put X1s in your deck.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think that's much of a cost because there's so many good not X1s that this deck can play.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I just think that this Hypnotic Spectre thing sounds bad. Even without Kumbaj Witches. My 2/1 that randomly makes someone discard a card, it just doesn't seem great against a format full of gushes and ninjas and stuff like that.
Well, then don't play it.
Yeah, okay, there you guys go. Don't play that card.
But I think this is one of the cards that, like, this in tandem with Electrickery make X1s extra bad in our format, right? Like, we know that they're bad, and this is one of the reasons I'm pointing to. Like, Mono Black has fallen off, but it does have months where it surges a bit. So, like, it's a card to be aware of for sure when you're brewing a deck or something.
It absolutely makes Tireless Tribe's life a living hell. Like, you just can't win if Kumbaj Witches is in play.
Yeah, and if they tap the Kumbaj Witch, that's, like, I think we touched on this another episode of, like, most, like, a lot of people will think that you tap the Kumbaj Witch to get cards out of their hand, make them discard, but since you can switch the power and toughness with one of your spells of Kumbaj Witches, they just choose the witch as a target and send it back at your feet.
I think that's what I found. Yeah. I was in a situation playing Tribe where they had a Kumbaj Witches in play, and I had no way to win. And then on my end step, they just tapped their Kumbaj Witches to ping my guy. I discarded a card, and then used one of my redundant copies of Inside Out to switch power and toughness on Kumbaj Witches, and then pinged it back, and then won the next turn. So, I mean, like, yeah, it's probably not likely that you play around them having multiple copies of Inside Out to punish you, but also it's just not worth the risk, right? It's one of those things where you are so guaranteed that you're going to win that you don't need to open yourself to any type of risk, even if it's like that big, Yeah. So that's Kumbaya Witches. Okay, main topic. Blue-black control. So kind of want to maybe just go down sort of just the shell of this deck, sort of what makes these decks up. And I think the first thing, maybe in my opinion, the most important part is the removal package of these decks.
Okay.
And so we've got a lot of like minus effects in this format, and you're looking at cards like Agony Warp, Disfigure, Vicious Offering, Fungal Infection, Tragic Slip. There's a huge number of minus effects. The ones that are typically seeing the most play, of course, are Disfigure and Agony Warp.
Yeah, that Agony Warp can really, it does so much work for you. It just it kills a guy more often than not, and then fogs another guy.
Yeah.
If you have a creature, it just makes combat like unplayable. Like, it makes combat really tough.
Yeah, if you're in a situation where you think, okay, I can attack here, and they're going to take a bunch of damage, and then I'm going to trade my creature with their creature, and they just have 2 mana up, then you're probably just losing both your creatures.
Yeah.
The next thing in the removal package are edict effects. So these are the effects that make you sacrifice creatures. Diabolic Edict, and what's the other one?
Chainer's Edict?
Chainer's Edict. Chainer's Edict is the good one because it has flashback for 1 million mana. But Diabolic Edict is an instant, which I have found to be very relevant.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Like, I did some practice games with this deck. I think I did 3, and I just happened to go against a Reanimator deck, and he did get a Crusher. He gave it haste, and I just had the Diabolic Edict. Whew, that felt good.
Yeah. So kind of a toss-up on, I've seen a lot of lists just not play any Diabolic Edicts, and then I see lists that are like 2 Diabolic Edicts, 1 Chainer's Edict, 2 Chainer's Edict, 1 whatever. I don't know. I think it's kind of just up to you, really, how you want to play. I personally like playing at instant speed, so I like playing Diabolic Edict more than I like Chainer's Edict. Like, I've kind of found that I rarely ever am in a position where I'm flashing back Chainer's Edict. Like, where it's like, oh, I'm glad I have this Chainer's Edict in my graveyard. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, but this deck, it's a toolbox, kind of. Like, you fill it with whatever you want, and I tend towards the Chainer's Edicts because I don't mind tapping out so much, and it just makes your late game insane, in my opinion. If you can ever get them to a position where they're top decking, and you can just feel safe throwing a flashback Chainer's Edict and then holding your other removal spell, like, oh, that feels so good. I like Chainer's Edict, though. People say that this deck fluctuates with how good Chainer's Edict is at any given moment, and there's some truth to that, but Chainer's Edict kind of is always just at least value, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I would advocate for ever not playing a Chainer's Edict. I don't know. I usually like to go like 1 Chainer's, 2 Diabolic. That's usually the split that I like to play. Whether that's right or not, I don't know, but because I think that it is relevant to have 1 with flashback if you see it off of Forbidden Alchemy, and you can always throw it in the graveyard and take something else, and it's like you got 2 spells.
Yeah, that is a pretty neat synergy that does just passively happen when you play Forbidden Alchemy. Is it does have flashback, and you don't have to play the front end.
Yeah. Okay, and then we've got Doomblade, and I just kind of have Doomblade there because there's not really any catch-all removal spells in these colors besides that one card.
Victim of Night?
Not Victim of Night. Victim of Night. That's not a catch-all.
It's close.
It's conditional.
Murder? I don't know.
I guess murder. Murder's a thing. I was thinking of the enchantment, the black enchantment.
Oubliette?
Oublietti. Oblight. Oubliette. Yeah, I was thinking of Oubliette, but I don't know. I think Doomblade's sort of the best unconditional removal spell, even though it is conditional.
Yeah.
I still think it's like the best of all the options to play, like over Murder, over Oubliette.
And it's not just a sideboard card. Like, I Googled a list and just played that, and it had 3 Doomblades in it. I think that's kind of where this list was going instead of... I had 1 Instant Speed Edict and the 3 Doomblades. It's an easy card to sideboard out.
I was on 3 Doomblades last night.
Against... it's easy to sideboard out against black. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's a pro for the card, but most of the time there's not a mono black deck. Like, mono black control and the mirror, I think, where you are worried about killing Gurmag Anglers are the matchups where it's bad. But that just leaves, like, I don't know, 90-something% of the meta.
Yeah, but in those matchups, your Chainer's Edicts are just really good, and your Diabolic Edicts are just really good. So you're kind of just okay.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of tools to fight Gurmag Angler fights in mirror matches and stuff that I like playing 2 to 3 Doomblades as your really good catch-all.
And it really does matter that Doomblade is targeted. Like, having some targeted removal that isn't like a disfigure. Like, one of the cards that I would be afraid of is like Lysolana Huntmaster, because that's almost never alone on the field, and Doomblade can just kill something like that, right?
Just straight up kill it dead. The next part of... I kind of lump these 2 together, the removal and then the counterspell package. So you'll see the 4 copies of counterspell. You don't always see copies of like Remove Soul or Essence Scatter. I sometimes like to play like 1 or 2 copies. Then you see Exclude and Soul Manipulation. Right now I'm playing 2 copies of Soul Manipulation and 1 copy of Exclude. Wow. To just kind of go with the heavier creature package that I like to play with.
And they're basically Cryptic Command, right?
No. Not even close.
Kolaghan's Command?
Now we're just getting colder.
I don't know.
Kolaghan's Command is better than Cryptic Command.
But is it better than Soul Manipulation?
That's a good question. I think that these cards are vastly inferior.
I just love comparing things to cards they don't need to be compared to. Just
two 5-mana 3/3s. Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Soul Manipulation is actually one that took me a while to actually put into my deck, because I thought Exclude was just better. Easier on the mana, you draw a card, but
it's not conditional on something being in the yard either.
yeah. Yeah, but I think that I don't know. I really like soul manipulation. It gives your mole drifters something to do on turn 3. You
Yeah,
know, if I just don't have anything, I can always evoke a mole drifter and then get it back later with soul manipulation, and that always feels really good. Or they just sometimes kill a Gurmag Angler and you can just
get back your
get one
angler.
back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, late game you can get it back and probably cast it in the same turn.
Just remove the fear of doing things with your creatures. Like, just let them die, use them up, get them in the yard, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my creatures become a little bit more expendable. I can use them more as tools and resources rather than this is my win condition. I need to protect the queen. It's like no, I can use this to stabilize me, to block things, to eat up removal spells or something, clear the way for something else.
One thing about this deck is it always feels like they have more counter spells than they actually do, in my opinion. You ever feel like that when you're playing against it? Like, you just feel like they're running 12 counter spells, but they have 4 plus their odd, specific counter spells. Like,
I'd say it's usually 7 to 8.
Yeah, and I think that does come down to, like, the Forbidden Alchemy being in the deck. Like, they just have such good filter, and they're going to find that card, and it just ends up being the best card they can get, like, the majority of the time.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the third piece of our machine, our engine, our vehicle, I don't know. We've tried to use that analogy before in the past. I don't get it, but
little helicopter,
the little engine that could, our little engine that could,
our swan boat.
Yeah, blue-black control is like a little swan boat.
This is your pedals.
Yeah, these are the pedals that make your little swan boat go.
And the removal's the beak.
What are the counter spells? The wings?
No, it's the little roof. The little roof.
I imagine this
head.
without a roof.
No, this has a roof. It's counter spells, just in case it rains. I don't know.
That's actually really good. That works. This is a good analogy. This came together a lot better than I thought it was when we started.
Yeah, blue-black is just a swan boat.
Cool. Blue-black swan boat control. Boom. Okay, so your little pedals for your feet
Yeah.
is the card draw. And this is sort of literally the little pedals that make your swan boat go.
Jeez.
You know, so there's not a lot of actual like card draw. There's sort of like you talked about filtering and sort of searching effects. There are a couple good card draw spells in the deck, but for the most part, it's cards like Forbidden Alchemy and Mystical Teachings that kind of just let you find a specific answer. And we touched on that a bit when we were talking about sort of the toolbox nature of this deck, where we can abuse putting things into our graveyard and using these spells to find key answers at the right time.
Mine was, the list I copied was running Preordained, like, straight up. Like, I don't know if that's, I feel like that's kind of abnormal, but you can play cantrips in these. Like,
yeah, you can. I don't like them.
Yeah,
personally,
I do like the control-ish cantrips, like Forbidden Alchemy and Teachings, way better.
Yeah.
And then Think Twice.
I think if I was gonna have slots for cards like Preordain, I would probably just rather that be Think Twice, because you're so good at acting at instant speed with your cards like Counterspell and your Doomblades, your good removal, that if your opponent does, you can just hold up your mana, and if your opponent does something that you want to react to, you react to it. But if they don't, you're not wasting your mana because, oh, I'm not countering this spell, or my opponent just didn't cast a spell, so now I'm wasting my mana. Well, you think twice, and you're spending your mana. You're not losing anything.
Yeah.
I think I like that a little better. There are some good card draw, and I think, in my opinion, one of the best ones in this deck is Probe. This is a card that maybe some people don't always play, but I always play it. I love Probe. This card is OP.
The ceiling on Probe is incredibly high.
Don't even get me started on the floor.
So what is Probe for people who aren't familiar?
Okay, so Probe is a 2 and a blue for a sorcery that says draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards. But then it has kicker for 1 and a black. And if it was kicked, your opponent discards 2 cards as well.
So you're looking at 3 cards, putting 2 away that you don't care about, or have flashback or something like that.
Yeah.
And then your opponent discards 2 cards.
Ban a Chainer's Edict and a Forbidden Alchemy, and then your opponent discards the last 2 cards in his hand. It basically, you resolve a kicked Probe. I just don't think you're losing your game.
Unless they already have like an insane board state, right? Like,
yeah.
Unless you've already lost the game. Like,
if you're so behind on the board. But this deck does such a good job at playing 1 for 1 the whole game that it's very easy to keep a board in a managed position. And then you use a spell like Probe and you're just so far ahead. It's like Torrential Gear Hulk.
Oh, I like it. It's exactly like that.
It's exactly like Torrential Gear Hulk.
But this is Pauper, so he wouldn't fit in the swan boat.
No. he would hang out in the river. He would walk in the river next to the swan boat. You know, you're pedaling your little swan boat, trying to keep up with your Gear Hulk, and he's just walking through the lake.
So the people who don't watch the videos on YouTube, Brandon's pantomiming all of this. He's got his hands up, doing all the pedaling motions with his hands.
My hands are my little feet, and they're pedaling.
Then he shifted.
Go to YouTube and go to the constructed criticism thing and subscribe and like, and then you can watch all my pantomiming. Hours of enjoyment for the whole family.
But I feel like a lot of this is pointing towards like how I feel the deck works is like you 1 for 1, you 1 for 1, you 1 for 1, and then you resolve a spell that just puts you so far ahead on cards that it's amazing. Like that's what makes this a control deck, right? Like Mole Drifter, Probe, Gurmag Angler, any of these things you resolve and then they have to 2 for 1 themselves, or like the spell just makes it so you're 2 cards up, something like that. You can get rid of something you don't care about. When you win the game with this deck, a lot of the times you're at 7 cards and your opponent's at 0. And they've been at 0 for 7 turns because you're just no. And they don't concede because they don't see the writing on the wall. But you're just so far ahead on cards, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you often get into a position where, you know, it's turn whatever, they're top decking, and you have 1 card in your hand and a Forbidden Alchemy in the graveyard. And you'll just get into those positions where your opponent draws their card, passes the turn, and you're just like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because now you can flash back your alchemy and keep your answer in hand. And now you're just that much farther ahead. Now you're going to untap, and now you have 3 cards to their 1, and they're just never, ever going to get ahead. Like, they're never going to get into a position where they can try to double spell and get ahead on board. Feels good, man.
I will say with this deck, one of the important things about playing it online is you have to play very quickly because the games are going to go long, and chances are your opponent doesn't have to think as hard as you. So if you play more quickly than your opponent, you're going to win a fair number of games like that.
Yeah. And maybe this is just coming down to familiarity with the deck. But because before I started playing Blue Red Delver, I played this deck exclusively for a long, long time. But I found that my opponents usually always have less clock than me.
Huh.
Because they're the ones trying to take game actions on their turn. They're the ones trying to do all these things, attack and all this stuff. And my turns consist of draw, play land, go. Oh, you did something? Counterspell. Oh, you're attacking me? Doomblade. And they're the ones who have to use more clock.
Yeah.
And then when I get into a position where I'm going to win, it's not like I'm slowly whittling you down. It's like a take 7, take 10. You know, and you're just attacking with these huge game-ending threats. So I mean, not saying you don't have to play quickly, but I've
Yeah.
just found that I usually have a ton of clock.
But a lot of people will have the problem that they have too many stops on their opponent's turn, and so they end up having to hit F5 over and over and being careful about it so they're not like hitting it through a spell or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that does take a lot of time. So it's like you can't yield through your turn, you can't yield through their turn. So you just have to get really good at playing this deck, right?
Yeah. We kind of talked about Mold Drifter. Mold Drifter just might be the best card draw spell in this deck. I like Probe a lot, but Mold Drifter's insanity.
Well, yeah. Like just sheer card advantage, it's probably the best card in the deck.
It's always a 3-for-1.
Yeah. If it resolves, right?
Yeah, and if it didn't resolve, you 1-for-1, and you still are okay with that because, as we've talked about, you're probably going to win the 1-for-1 challenge.
Since we're on the topic of Forbidden Alchemy, like in the card draw segment, I play a lot of mid-range where I'm just trying to play creatures that draw cards, like replace themselves, do things like that. That's actually one kind of effective way to beat this deck is just outvalue them just by having everything in your deck generate some kind of value. And the way I end up winning those games isn't like overwhelming them almost ever. It's they deck themselves before I do because they're playing Forbidden Alchemy and they're flashing it back. And that's 4 cards every time. That's an effective mill strategy in addition to their Mold Drifters and stuff, right?
Yeah, that is one really big thing to be cognizant of is your deck size. Sometimes it gets really hard to find a win condition in time, and you can get sometimes your opponents can just run you out of threats. And you get to a point where it's like, oh, I've got nothing. That's really hard just because a lot of these threats, like we said, are 2-for-1s and soul manipulation helps a lot, but sometimes your opponent can just keep you off of a win condition. I think that the hardest matchups for these decks, though, are exactly the kind of decks that you're describing. I think that fairies, decks that have fairy miscreants, ninja the deep hours, those are all things that can be really powerful, and you've got to be careful. If your opponent, I think, ever connects once with a ninja the deep hours, you're very behind. And so you have to just be really careful about managing your resources and your mana so that can't happen. Those decks are so good at presenting questions that you have to answer that it's hard to just ignore what they're doing and wait until they ninja you or whatever, or wait till they resolve a Stormbound Geist, that you've got to be reacting to their threats. And they'll just somehow find a window there to get in that hit with ninja or resolve that extra fairy miscreant and draw that card. Because this deck really doesn't have a lot of good card advantage.
Wait,
and
this
so it's
deck?
really, yeah.
It does, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's all late game stuff.
Okay,
like
yeah.
Probe and Mold Drifter, But everything else they're doing is 1-for-1. 1-for-1. Even Forbidden Alchemy is 1-for-1 until you can flash it back. Because you're spending your spell and your mana to find your spell, and then you're using that spell on one of their threats. So until you can flash it back and get value out of it that way, you're still just 1-for-1ing. And so some of these Delver decks can just get really far ahead on card advantage and tempo because, one, their threats are just so much more efficient, and their answers are so much more efficient, and they're all generating value.
I think it feels weird to say that they're not generating value that often because almost every card in the deck does. Like the only ones that aren't are like some of their counterspells, just the one that's just blue counterspell. If they play Exclude or Soul Manipulation, those are advantage. Edicts are like their Chainer's Edicts. Those are just hidden advantage. Most of their cantrips all have Flashback. That's advantage. Mold Drifter, Evanker's Justice, like.
Yeah, and these are all big spells. That's what I said.
Okay.
That's like literally what I said.
I know,
when you get into these bigger spells, yeah. But you've got to get there against these decks that are presenting some of the most resilient and efficient threats in the game that are all generating better advantage than your Doomblade. Okay, I Doombladed your Fairy Miscreant in response to your other Fairy Miscreant. I disfigured your Spellstutter Sprite that already countered my other Disfigure. Like, It's really easy to get behind against these decks because all their spells are more efficient and generate more advantage.
They don't generate more advantage. I think they generate tempo as well as advantage, and like.
So they do both. They tempo you and they generate more advantage.
Okay, it's just I don't know. I just can't bring myself to say that there's like every card in the deck isn't generating. Like I feel like it does generate more advantage.
They're not though. A lot of your spells aren't. At the end of the day, a lot of your spells are just 1-for-1.
I think
every counter spell in your deck, except for Exclude, is 1-for-1. The only one that generates advantage, if you're using it as a counter spell, is Exclude. And Soul Manipulation is 1-for-1.
No, you counter a spell and then you get something back from your graveyard. That's 2.
No, you choose 1.
No, you can do both.
What? Get out of here. I don't believe this. That's too good to be true. Holy cow! I hate everything about who you are. Why do you have to be smart? Cool. So 3 of your cards. 3 of your cards generate advantage.
What?
Boom.
I think it's easier to count the cards that don't generate advantage.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them.
Like Disfigure, Doomblade, and
all your removal spells, all your counter spells, all the things you're needing to get to your big spells.
So I'm not disagreeing with you on the tempo and the fact that they're going to cast way more spells more quickly, and they're going to have like real cards, but like a bunch of your edicts do, and a bunch of your counter spells do, and then like almost all of your creatures.
Your edict generates value again on turn 7. And you're spending 7 whole mana to flash it back.
Yeah, but it's a card. It's a 2-for-1.
Is it a 2-for-1 when you're edicting away a spell stutter sprite that's already countered one of your spells? Or a fairy miscreant that's already drawn a card? No. Like at the end of the day, you're still like at parity. The only things that really get you far ahead are like Mole Drifter and Probe.
I still call that advantage.
I'm not saying it's not advantage. I'm just not saying it's more advantage than what these other decks have.
I think you're talking about like specifically Scred Delver.
I am literally talking about specifically Delver. I at the beginning of this conversation, I said these Delver decks with fairies.
Okay.
That's literally what I'm talking about.
But their tempo is faster, but I want to say that Blue-Black Control has more card advantage.
Maybe in the late game. Like maybe our bigger spells, yeah. But we gotta get to our bigger spells.
Sure. But
and this whole time we're 2-for-1ing ourselves, or just playing 1-for-1 with them, and they're just slowly getting ahead and ahead and ahead. And then when I get to the point where I can resolve a probe, like it doesn't really do anything because I'm already so behind on the board. Like that was literally your point when we talked about probe. Like if you're behind enough on board, probe doesn't matter. Like you literally brought that up as your point.
But there's so many things that just help you live to that point that you do get the advantage for your spells. That's why they're in there.
Yeah, in a lot of matchups, but not against matchups where all of their things are 2-for-1ing you.
I mean, but the goal is still to out advantage that person. Like,
yeah, and you can't. I don't think you do that very well against these Delver decks.
Okay, I won't say well, but like, that's what you're doing. That's the whole goal, though.
Sure, it's the goal. Probably doesn't work very well.
Works okay.
Okay is fine, but it doesn't win games. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, against these Delver decks, they just generate so much better advantage in tempo, which tempo can translate into card advantage later on. Like, if they've tempoed you out to the point where you're, I have a probe in my hand, but it doesn't matter because I'm not going to get to kick it.
I know, and that's why a bunch of people don't play probe specifically. Right, but...
Or like if I'm never going to be able to resolve a Mole Drifter because I have to spend 5 mana to do it, and they're just going to counterspell me or daze me or something. Like, I think that the Delver decks translate their tempo and all the other card advantage and all the other stuff they're accruing into card advantage. And I think that's probably why this deck doesn't see as much play, Like,
Sure,
this
I'm
deck
not saying like it's got the best matchup or anything, but like I think what in my mind what's going on is if you just took the whole deck and
Okay.
if you looked at every single card and was like, is this gonna get are we trying to get one card or two cards out of this? Like, are we trying to one for one here or two for
I
one
just
here?
don't think that's the case. So cards that get us 2 cards. You have your 3 copies of Forbidden Alchemy, your 1 copy of Mystical Teachings, your 3 copies of Mulldrifter, your Probe, your Chainer's Edicts, your Soul Manipulations.
Evan Curse Justice.
Okay, yeah, Evan Curse Justice.
Gurmag Angler.
A lot of people aren't playing Evan Curse Justice. Like, I've seen a lot of lists without it, and I think that's wrong. But yeah, Evan Curse Justice. I don't know. Even Gurmag Angler.
I guess they can spread it, but
or they can just ignore it because they're so far ahead of you on board. I'm just saying, I don't think there's any argument that can be made for a deck having more forms of card advantage than a Delver deck in this format.
I don't think we're going to agree then.
All right, that's fair. I mean, I don't know. You play neither this deck nor Delver decks, so I guess you're the authority, right?
Man, it's so salty in here right now. Just don't see how you could say that the control deck isn't trying to get advantage more than a tempo deck.
I'm not saying it's not trying to. I'm saying that it's just not. And I think that's just a matter of the cards that are available to the control decks. Like, I don't know. I think there's a good reason that this deck's not better.
I think it's the tempo. I don't think it's the card advantage.
I mean, the tempo translates into card advantage, though. We've talked about this with, like, burn decks and aggro decks. Their card advantage is, I killed you while you had 4 cards in your hand. I made you mulligan to 3 this game. Right? So these Delver decks, they translate tempo into card advantage, and all their creatures generate card advantage.
So, like, is burn the best? Like, is the fastest deck the one with the best card advantage? Like, no, not really. Like, I'm just saying.
That's not even what I'm saying at all.
You're saying that if you are left with cards in your hand, then that's card advantage. Like
you've literally used that in past episodes.
Yeah, I know.
Where we've talked about aggressive decks. You've used that. And what I'm saying is take the Delver decks. They do that. Okay? They kill you while you have cards left in your hand that you could never, ever get to cast. All their creatures generate a 2-for-1.
But Chainer's Edict is in the deck for, like, you do flash that back. Like, you can't just be like, no, that doesn't count because you're dead before then. You're always dead before then. Like, this deck wins against Delver some amount of the time, and when it does, it has out-advantaged them, like, every time. It's not, like, doing something weird and then tempoing them out. Like, it has the ability to generate more card advantage than they do. If nothing goes under them. If they end up getting enough disfigures, and then they can counterspell the 2-for-1s that their opponent is going to do, I think they can end up winning, like, based on their deck generates more card advantage.
Yeah, some percent of the time, like, they can win game and generate more card advantage, but I don't know. I think, like, as a whole, there's a reason this deck is, like, predominantly at the bottom of our power rankings.
It's the speed. It's not the card advantage. You can't, like... Can we agree to disagree and move on?
I guess. I just don't think there's any way that you can make an argument that there's a deck that can out card advantage Delver.
I just made an argument. You're just not accepting it.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a good argument.
Okay.
Because I've played both these decks.
I'm saying let's just agree to disagree. You don't have to think that it's a good argument.
All right. Okay.
Where are we?
Win conditions. We've got... So main win conditions in this deck, we're looking at Gurmag Anglers. So sure, just a big, threat that gets in and kills your opponent really fast. We've got Mole Drifters, which is probably like the best win condition in this deck.
Yeah.
And not all decks do this, but I think that you should at least be playing Evankar's Justice, and then sometimes you'll see like Capsize.
Yeah, the Capsize I'm less on board for. I've been destroyed by it before, but Evankar's Justice, its ability to, like, you can cash it in at the 4 mana and not flash it back every time and catch you up. I think that's a great ability on a card.
Yeah, I think Evankar's Justice is really great. I also really like playing the version of the deck that has 2 copies of Pristine Talisman so that you can just kill them with Evankar's Justice.
And then does that version not really run as many creatures? Like, I thought that's what the Pristine Talisman version did. It just didn't play.
My version has 3 Gurmag Anglers, 3 Mole Drifters, 4 Augur Bolas.
Oh yeah, and they're not on this list anywhere, right?
No, they're not. We totally forgot about that.
But I guess that counts as a win condition. It's also I don't even dare to say it. It's also card advantage.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I think that you are undervaluing the amount of card advantage that I think this deck has. I just think Delver decks have more. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to say this deck doesn't have card advantage.
I get that's what you're saying, and I value your opinion, Brandon.
Well, thanks. You're a good friend.
Do you think anyone wants to listen to us like yell at each other over whether Delver or Blue-Black Control has more card advantage for like freaking 30 minutes? I don't know.
Should we just start the episode over again?
No, I want to see where that goes. Like,
oh, man.
I want to see if anybody like thinks that's funny, think that's entertaining. I mean, people watch the Jerry Springer show, right? Like, all that is what we just did, except we're doing it over Magic cards. Like, we're just fighting. It's like, no, girl. My Blue-Black Control deck has way more card advantage. I probably shouldn't do an accent like that, but like, trying to imitate people.
Jerry. Oh man, I will say this is why I think that we have a good dynamic and a good friendship. We can yell at each other for 30 minutes about something that we'll never see eye to eye on, because both of us are incredibly stubborn.
Brandon, and when I got a good line. Sorry, I got it.
What?
Brandon Clark, you are not the Germ Daddy. Oh!
And then she takes her shoes off and tries to throw them at me.
But yeah, like we
can argue about something for 30 minutes. And I'll admit, I probably get more heated and things like that than I should, because I don't know, I get passionate about stuff, and like sometimes I like my tones come across as like I'm really upset and angry, and that's just how I go, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you understand that about me, and so you can just sit there and smile and nod and then come at me with your logical counterpoint, and then I got to get flustered because you said something smart and then try to refute it. And it's a good dynamic. Good ebb and flow we got. You know, but then after all that, we can just sit and laugh about how hilarious it's going to be for our listeners.
Yeah, and I was like laughing the whole time.
Oh gosh, where are we again? Are we still want to talk about win conditions?
I
don't know. I think they're straightforward.
Mole
Drifter deals damage and draws cards. Gurmag Angler deals damage in increments of 5.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty huge point when you're playing against this deck, is that Gurmag Angler deals damage in increments of 5, and if you can play a gain land, that buys you an entire turn that you don't have to block a Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that kind of also just goes back to my point earlier where I was saying that this isn't a deck that's going to nickel and dime you. When the deck is ready to turn the corner and it turns that corner, you're dead in like 2 or 3 turns. It's like hit you with 2 Gurmag Anglers, hit you with a Gurmag Angler and a Mole Drifter.
And if they're not killing you that quick, it's because you're throwing guys in front of their Gurmag Angler.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what's the card called?
What? Oh. An Abyss.
Abyss, yeah.
You made an Abyss. Wow, that's a lot of card advantage.
It is. Some would say more than other decks, but others wouldn't. Fat, stupid other people.
Yeah, I hate stupid other people. So I want to talk a bit about the dynamic between your removal spells and your counter spells. Kind of like, is there a rule of thumb for what you're Doomblading and what you're disfiguring and what you're counterspelling?
There's a bunch, and it is, I think, complicated, of course. Like,
yeah,
if it doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect, a lot of the time it is correct to let it resolve and then save your counterspell. If you believe they have a protection spell, a lot of the time you want to go for the counterspell. So it is really matchup dependent.
Or do you ever let the creature resolve, try to kill it, and then counterspell the protection spell, and effectively get that out of the way too?
I think that also is like one of the best things you can do, because you need to use those.
If you counter the creature, they've still got that protection spell in your hand, and you're still just left with your removal spell for their next creature that they protect.
The priority spells are your counter spells. Those are the most important spells. Like, they have a much higher, I don't know what point value. Like, you want to use it. In my head, I kind of assign a point value. It's not a real number. It's just kind of how I prioritize them. You want to use your removal spells first, and then your counter spells, because your counter spells can deal with anything, and your removal spells are niche.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it too. I don't know, it's like a
tier system.
Counter spell, removal spell, and then within counter spells, there's your actual counter spell, exclude, soul manipulation, essence scatter, and then removal spells. You've got Doomblade, Agony Warp, Disfigure, like Edict, and I think that like you kind of use those spells starting from the very bottom. You know, so like I'm gonna always Edict to your first creature, and then try to like use my other spells on your follow-up creatures, because I don't want to ever be in a position where I've used all my other spells. You now have 2 threats, one of which I need to immediately deal with, and all I'm left with is my Edict.
And then there's also kind of it depends on how much mana they have, of course, but if you have a removal spell and you can counter something, but they have enough mana to play a second thing, you want to try to wait till the second thing comes out, right? And if you have both of these cards in your hand, like a removal spell and a counter spell.
Yeah. I think that's the same argument for, I guess, edicts too. Like if they have a creature, you know, if you've got the instant, and this is one of the other reasons I like the instant speed edict. So say they have a creature that I can edict, but I can also disfigure. Yeah, I'm going to wait and see what what their next creature is before I decide how I'm going to respond to that creature. So, you know, if they play something that I can't disfigure, okay, well now I'm going to disfigure this creature and then edict away this creature. So,
yeah, you're saving the edicts for those big creatures, and those disfigures are helping you keep the board clear.
Yeah, for your edict effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think just prioritizing almost what your most narrow answer is. Using your most narrow answer at the first available moment, because you don't know if you're going to get that opportunity again. You don't want to ever be in a spot where you counterspelled their creature when you had a remove soul in your hand, and then they cast something that you can't remove soul, and you're stuck. So,
yeah, remove soul is like kind of, it's different than the other counter spells. I want to say that remove soul you use even before a removal spell.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the last key things we want to focus on is sort of turning the corner. And that's always something that's really hard when you're playing a control deck, is knowing when you're ready to start winning the game, or when it's safe for you to start putting your threats onto the table and trying to close out a game.
I have a really hard time deciding when to cast Muldrifter. Like, if I have a counterspell in my hand, do I Muldrifter and try to pull ahead that way? Or do I just kind of maintain my shields up mode and keep trying to land lands until I've kind of out advantaged all of their little guys and I have 7 mana so I can play Muldrifter and have counterspell up? That's what I end up doing most of the time, instead of just going for Muldrifter on like turn 5.
I don't know that I would ever want to slam Muldrifter on turn 5. There's probably some corner cases where that's fine, but yeah, for the most part, I think you want to be in a position where you've one for one as much as you can with your opponent, and then when you're both down to minimal cards, then you slam that Muldrifter and pull ahead. And all of a sudden, you're just so much up on cards from them that they're going to now have to answer this Muldrifter. And at that point, you don't really care if it gets answered, because it's drawn you into so much more. And you're just going to slowly start pulling ahead of them that way.
I think the one corner case you do just jam Muldrifter when you hit 5 mana is you don't have any other spell that allows you to keep your shields up.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get those spells so that on future turns you can, and then hopefully the Muldrifter will like block or something.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of bluffing mana.
Oh, I never.
Ever.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a smart thing for a player to do. Like, oh, I have 2 cards in hand. It's a land and a Muldrifter. Well, I could not play my land and my Muldrifter and make them think I got something. And maybe they won't cast a spell on their turn. And I mean, maybe your opponent won't. Maybe they won't, but like most likely they're going to, because they know they got to get it out of your hand eventually. And so they're going to jam their spells.
And they're going to just go for the chance that you're holding 4 land and their bear is going to end up dealing you damage 4 times before you can find the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I think if you don't have anything to do with your mana on your opponent's turn, I think you definitely just jam in that scenario for sure. And then hope that what you draw is going to allow you to untap and start catching back up. So weaknesses of the deck, you kind of touched on this, is IDing.
No. This is LD, land destruction.
Oh, land destruction. I thought that was like an ID, which I was going to have to correct you on, because you're not intentionally drawing. You're just either drawing or losing to the MTGO clock. But yeah, land destruction. You play a lot of bounce lands and tapped lands, and
yeah, I don't think we touched on the fact that you're playing Bojuka Bog, which I think that's a relevant thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I bring up land destruction is really because you're playing those bounce lands, and it means you have to keep up counterspell constantly, otherwise you're just going to go back 2 turns. It's not a good feeling when that gets blown up. It's almost unwinnable when one of them gets blown up.
Yeah, and honestly, some of the worst feelings of playing this deck is when you have to play your bounce land on turn 2. Like,
oh yeah.
In any case where I can, I will always play my bounce lands on like turn 4, where I can still leave up 2 mana or something, to be able to counterspell or removal spell or whatever. I can never feel secure just slamming a bounce land on turn 2 or 3. There are so many early plays in this format that'll just punish these control decks if they tap their mana.
Yeah, and you're right that you say turn 4, because if you do it on turn 3, then you're going down. Like, you can't have 2 untapped mana at that point.
Right. Yeah, I never do it in a scenario where I don't have less than 2 mana. And obviously, like, if it's my only land drop, you do it and just pray. But
yeah,
in every scenario that I can, I'm always keeping my 2 mana up. You always need your shields up on these early turns, because this format can be very fast and very punishing.
The fact that this does play so much removal does mean that it can catch back up. Like, it just kind of holds up. You can hold up counterspell kind of take your damage, and then on their end step, you start clearing the field.
It's matchup dependent too. Like I think if I'm playing against Stompy's not a good example because they can slam Elephant Guide and you're done for. But in a lot of other matchups where they're just playing straightforward creatures, you can feel safe on turn 3 to slam it so that you're untapping on turn 4 with optimal mana, and then you can double spell, and all of a sudden you're at parity again.
Yeah, slower decks like Monarch, where they're playing like a 2-mana guy that makes them have to recast their weird little bauble. They're playing like one guy a turn for the most part.
Yeah, I think Monarch is an example of a deck where I feel safe playing my bounce land as soon as possible, so that I can untap and just spend those later turns building up my mana and casting 2 spells a turn, 3 spells a turn.
Yeah, and your Augur of Bolas can block and kind of buy you time, it acts not as a removal spell, but as a roadblock so that you don't take that damage in much the same way. It kind of
gets you to a point where you can be safe on, turn 5 and get to turn 6 and stuff.
I think we should wrap it up.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for listening to Fight Night here at Common Knowledge.
Tweet me. Tell me I won.
You probably did.
Don't give up.
I don't know. I think I'm right, but I've also just learned that usually when I disagree with you, I am wrong.
I'm going to make a neat infographic to try to prove you wrong.
That's enough for me. I believe you're right.
Don't give up.
How did we go from peaceful, graceful swang boats in the lake to
I forgot we were even doing that. I was going to actually say that the creatures in your deck is the propeller that pushes you to victory.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty good, huh?
That is a good one. What an episode it's been.
It was freaking weird.
Oh, but yeah, again, thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/common knowledge. There you'll get access to our Brandon versus Lobbert Common Coliseum videos. That's what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
The Common Coliseum.
You switched the name. I get first billing. Lobbert versus Brandon. I think we're done fighting. I'm sorry. Okay, you're first.
What did I say?
Brandon versus Lobbert.
Liar. Putting words in my mouth. Where are we?
So our stretch goal.
So our stretch goal. We are $15 away from hitting our first stretch goal, you guys. Our 5-card blind tournament. We're super excited about this. Go to the Patreon website, the page, and you can read all the rules and the details about that. We're still coming up with prizes and stuff for you guys, but we're gonna have cool stuff.
It's gonna
be so fun.
I've got plans. No worries.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Get us there so we can do this 5-card blind tournament with you guys. It'll be awesome. Don't forget, you can also support the show by checking out the CCMTG network on YouTube. Go there. Smash that subscribe button, like and favorite.
It's 2 weeks in a row you did that.
I know. It's great. I should start the podcast with "It's your boy." What's up, guys? It's your boy Brandon with Lobbert. Isn't that what all the popular YouTubers do? They say, "It's your boy."
Hey, YouTube. It's your boy Lobbert.
Coming at you with a new video. You can email the show, commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. And again, don't forget to check out our wonderful sponsors, puremtgo.com and inkedgaming.com. Don't forget, you can also use our coupon code CCMTG10 at checkout for all their awesome inked gaming supplies and accessories. So I just thought about it, and my adjective at the beginning of tonight's episode for you, feisty, it kind of fit.
It did.
It did. I hope the music is playing right now, playing us out where we're having this little chat. That's what I'm envisioning in my mind when I'm thinking about you editing this video. That the music is playing behind me right now, and our listeners are hearing us slowly fade.
It's not that long. It might the longer we wait, the less chances there are that it is.
Bye.
Bye.